In this video I am going to show you how to create the volumetric sphere shown above. Also I am going to show you how to animate the flamey effects on top of the sphere. We can start by moving the default cube on the side or deleting it. So we can add an icosphere or a UV sphere, does not matter in this case. We can put the shading on smooth, although it does not really matter with volumetric shaders. Now we can add the default diffuse shader to get started via the Properties panel. Then we can slide open another window and set it to the node editor. We can collapse the Properties shelf on the right with the N key. We can do the same for the Tools shelf with the T key. We can increase the node editor window space and enable the Blender Cycles viewport rendering. We can change our world background color to black so that we can better see the volumetric sphere that we are going to create. In our projects, it's always helpful to increase the node editor window space and to decrease the size of the viewport render border with the Shift B key. This way your GPU will not have such a hard time rendering in real time. We can delete the diffuse node and add the emission node with the Shift A key and connect the sockets. Then we can add the color ramp node and the matte node right after. For now I suggest you to just focus on adding the nodes. Later on you can analyze why we did it by experimentation. Now we are adding the brick texture node and connect the sockets to the matte node as shown. You can always check out the real-time changes in the viewport render. Now we can add first a Voronoi and after a noise texture node and make the socket connections as shown. You can check out the viewport render to check the real-time changes as we add the different nodes. We can duplicate the matte node and move it next to the Voronoi node and connect the two of them. Now we can add the node, which is usually on the far left of the node tree, which is the texture coordinate node. The texture coordinate node is used to set the coordinates of your textures. Several options are available, but throughout this course we will only be using generated and object. We will also be adding the mapping node. The significance of this node will be extensively shown in this course. We can duplicate the mapping node with the Shift D key 4 times to place and connect them as shown. We can also duplicate the matte node next to our Voronoi node and place it accordingly and make the connection. We can set this matte node to minimum and the second highlighted matte node to multiply. Next is the gradient texture node. You might want to get used to this node since it is an important texture node throughout this course. We can duplicate the highlighted noise texture node and place it as shown. We can also duplicate the gradient texture node and place it next to the matte node. We can put all the mapping node settings on texture instead of point. Now we can connect the texture coordinates node's object socket to all the 4 mapping nodes. When keeping Shift pressed with left mouse button, you can cut through a node wire to create a connector. With a connector you can clean up your wires, so that things don't end up looking like spaghetti. We can connect the sockets as shown of this gradient node and set it to quadratic sphere. We can also connect the sockets for the other gradient node, but this time set it to ease. You can make the last number of socket connections as shown. Now we have set up all the nodes and connections. However, our shader does not look like much. But don't worry, the magic is in the settings which we are going to adjust now. The first thing is that we can set the multiply value of this matte node to 5000 and set the color ramp node above it to be spline. We can also adjust the colors of the handles as shown. Use the plus sign to add a handle on the color ramp. Also check the red marker to know when I am pressing the left mouse button. As you can see, we have by accident created some funky effects. Different interesting effects might happen by accidents a lot when you are playing around with the nodes. So experimentation and adding random textures and connect them to different nodes are encouraged. But do save your file as a separate file when you discovered something cool. Now I am going to change some values to create the shader as advertised. So please also change the values in your file with the help of the highlights. Now in order to align our camera properly, we need to first go into front view with the numpad 1 key while having our cursor on the 3D viewport window. Then with the key Ctrl Alt numpad 0, we align our camera view to our current viewport view. We can select our sphere object and rotate it 45 degrees clockwise. You can keep the Ctrl key pressed while rotating with the R hotkey. This way it rotates with 5-degree increments. We can change the location X value of this mapping node to move the gradient ease effect upwards. We can change the color a bit of the right handle of our color ramp and change the mortar size of the brick texture to 0.03. Now we have our nice glowy sphere with a special effect which we will animate later on. We can change the X scale to 2 to stretch the noise texture a bit to make the effect a bit more flamey-like. We can collapse this mapping node by pressing the small arrow icon. By increasing or decreasing the node values pointed towards, you can create some dynamic moving effects with ease. You can also try the rotation value right next to it as well. Now I will show you how to animate these values. Let's first create another window and set it as the timeline editor. Now I will show you how to animate these values. Let's put both values to 0 and put a keyframe with the I key on both of them when having our cursor hovering on the value. Then we can put our current frame on 100 and change the pointed to values and add keyframes with the I key for both. So when we play the animation with the play button, you can see our blob moving. I am just going to adjust the speed of the moving blob by changing this value and keyframe it again. Also, what we can do is to change the interpolation of our animation. For this we can open a new window and set it to the graph editor. With this node selected, we can select all the handles in the graph editor with the A key and press T. In pop-up menu we can choose the linear interpolation. This will make sure the speed of the animation is the same throughout the frames. So when we play the animation, it does not speed up in the beginning and slow down in the end. I have just quickly moved the last keyframe from frame 100 to frame 250 to make the animation longer and increase the animated value to match the original speed. We can select this node and also change the animation interpolation to linear like the other mapping node. Now when we play back the animation, all the animation speeds of the effects are constant or linear. Also, it looks pretty cool. You can experiment with the values to change the look a bit. This is also a pretty nice look for our sphere. When we play the animation, we get something pretty unique here. I actually did not see this before recording this video. So as you can see, by changing one value a little, you already changed the look of the shader. So I urge you to experiment by changing values here and there and see what it does to your shader. Also don't forget to change the colors to create different moods. I hope you enjoyed and learned from this video, and I see you in the next lecture, where we will start our first project of creating the Blender logo animation from start to finish.